I'll praise you, Most High. Yeah, that sound good, y'all. Hello. What we doing?
Hey, cook that up, Khalid.
We still getting to the money, got these haters in they feel. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. This here, this how we live. Look here, homie, we still getting to the money, got these haters in they feel. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. This here, this how we live. Look here, homie, be still. They said you got the call, they trying to blackball you. Play what they own, bro. You can't blackball a boss. The whole world, they hate Israel. The way you hate your neighbor, might as well pull the trigger on yourself. You know we get excited by the smoke. Every day we casting flesh. Say my treasure stored in heaven, we gon' blow the rest. They disrespected and we check. The bank that causing kept it still. They asking others about my business, but I ain't got no instant miss. See, I still deal with ox direct. Cause your person don't mean you respect. Your outlet don't get no credit if the ox ain't in it. Money answer all things and you got all these questions. Playing Vic, look, I employ slavery. I'll if you broke your head. Yeah, them crews in the hood, Jews in the hood. I caught them clues, now I'm good. I broke it down, he understood my all to you. Filtered through, you found a few, I'm good. We what we sold, this here exclusive. They like, hey, folk, look what you doing. We still getting to the money, got these haters in they feel. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. This here, this how we live. Look here, homie, we still getting to the money, got these haters in they feel. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. This here, this how we live. Look here, homie, be still. Most I told me be still, give a room to work. Know my move, we work. Your faith ain't good, don't put the work in. In the spirit flexing, that my day job. Getting the mode out my own, I don't know what they are. Before I got the blueprint, and I'm too legit to quit. Let it spark in the dark, be a light, got it lit. Trying to map my movement, got my haters pondering. The odds set the question there, they wanna know if you still lit. It hit different, you authentic, a lot of odds pretending. We do it for the Lord, got my own motion, who are you to judge? The most high first, none above. Tap in the spirit, we locked in, they'll come against your plot. You know Judas said, yeah, we spit them scripts, they barely now. Came on slave ships, then you not blind. You know they tell you everything. Isaiah 30:20, yeah, we bad. You see what happened when they tried to rail the train up off the track. False witness, hypocrite. We throw shots back, now they feel hit. Must go get it. We still getting to the money, got these haters in they feel. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. This here, this how we live. Look here, homie, we still getting to the money, got these haters in they feel. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. This here, this how we live. Look here, homie, be still.
Yeah, please. Peace, this the mad scientist, you know what I'm saying? Hebrew name Gabriel, Hamalakia, so y'all can check me out on YouTube at Eric the Mad Scientist. You can check me on my Facebook, Eric the Mad Scientist, True Knowledge, my TikTok, Bang, and my Instagram is TrueHeart30. I'm about to get into these two things. I just seen Another putting up a lot of these scriptures, man, and I feel like The mistake people make is just taking a part of a verse and not going before it and after it to understand the real meaning of it. So I just wanted to break that down for y'all and the Hyksos information that I found that I think is interesting. But before we do that, let me introduce the queen of the lines, Dan. Karima, introduce yourself.
Shalom, peace, welcome. How you doing? Those that didn't subscribe, please subscribe. If you like the video, please like it. Not asking, not forcing, but if you enjoy the video, please share it. Also, thank you. Also, thank you.
Okay, yeah, yeah, like and share all the videos and subscribe, man.
Also,
And I got
you breaking up. You breaking up.
oh, okay, hold on. I think it might be playing something. Yeah, I think it did it when I tried to present. Let me see if I can do it again. All right, just why is it doing that? Um, is that better? Okay, yeah, okay, that's better. I got the presentation up. This is the I'm gonna jump right back in.
Okay. Welcome.
Okay, I got it. My bad. I was playing the Lansdale video instead of my video, but I'm about to put a presentation right now. This is the correction of Sarnetta. Hope y'all enjoy. Here you go. Okay, there you go. Peace, peace. It's the mad scientist. All right, let's get to this. I finally figured out what's going on. I didn't have my thing in. Sorry about that. Peace, peace. All right, so let's get to it. I wanted to speak on this. Peace, peace. I want to speak on this because I heard a lot of people speaking on these three verses, and I want to show how correctly Israelite brothers should be answering it, and to stop these people from keep coming with you with these verses. All right. To this Adam and Eve story. All right. When I go into this Adam and Eve story, right, this is what we're gonna do. I go into the Adam and Eve story. All right.
You breaking up? Or it's just me?
Now, this Adam and Eve story, I'm going to show, I'm going to literally show that Adam and Eve was not kicked out because where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. And he said, who told you thee was naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee, thou shalt not eat? And the man said, the woman who that gavest me, that thou gavest to be with me, she gave me the tree, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. And the Lord God said unto the woman, what hast thou done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon the belly thou shalt go, and the dust shalt thou eat all the days of the life of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between the seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Upon the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception and sorrow. Thou shalt bring forth children, and thou shalt be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, and the sorrow shalt thou eat of the days of thy life. Thorns of thistles shall bring forth to thee, and shall eat the herb of the field. And in the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread until thou return into the ground, for out of which thou art taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. And Adam called his wife named Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Until Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins and clothe them. And the Lord God said, behold, to man is become behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Right? And people read this all the time, for some reason they don't know what they're saying. But one thing I want to ask is, who was God talking to? Because when you read the rest of the verses, it doesn't say it was other people with God. It doesn't say it was other heavenly hosts. It doesn't say angels with him. So who was he speaking to when he said, man is like us now, knowing good and evil? Who else knew good and evil in the serpent? It's that simple. Who else knew good and evil in the garden? It's simple. The serpent. He was talking to the serpent, saying, you have taught man good and evil. Now they know good and evil like me and you know. Now I have to punish them, but I'm gonna have to kick them out, not because what they did. I punished them for what they did. I'm gonna have to kick them out. Let's go to the last verse. To know good and evil, and now these he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. So he didn't want them to touch the tree of life after they got the tree of knowledge, because it was two trees. It wasn't one tree. It was two. Tree of knowledge, tree of life. Okay. Therefore, the Lord God sent him from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. Therefore, the Lord sent him from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from when he was taken. Let's see why he kicked him out. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword was turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Now, a lot of these Christians, a lot of people is teaching, they have put the tree of life, the tree of knowledge, good and evil, they put all these things together. Not understanding it was two trees. So when he ate the tree of knowledge, good and evil, God punished them with Cain's birth, with the man over top of the woman, with the man tilling the ground, and back to the dirt that they was created from. So death, pain, childbirth, man over top of you, and man has to work to sweat till the ground until he sweat until he died, go back to the ground that he's tilling. Okay, and therefore he didn't want them to touch what? The tree of life, because why? They was going to live forever. Okay, so understand he was not. So stop teaching people and stop teaching the old Christian way that they were kicked out because they ate from the tree of knowledge when they actually was punished because of the tree of knowledge. All right. Now, I want to go to this verse right here. I want to go here because, oh no, let me go to Exodus right first. Let me go to Exodus first, right? Let me go back because people use this verse to say God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Now, I'm going to show that Pharaoh, that doesn't that mean that God went into Pharaoh's heart and hardened it, but actually it means that the Pharaoh was jealous and envy of God. And that's why he didn't listen to the message of God. Let me show you. And the Lord God said unto Moses, see, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy God shall be thy prophet. Thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh, that he send the children of Israel out of the land. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and multiply my signs and my wonders at the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt and bring forth mine armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out forth my hand upon Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. And Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded thee. So they and Moses were 80 years old, and Aaron 83 years old, when they spoke unto Pharaoh. All right. So it says God hardened his heart. So the people go say, "Oh, see, he made the heart Pharaoh heart hardened." No, he didn't. And I'm gonna show you that he didn't. And watch what this means. And y'all need to defend this, right? When they try to use these. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and to Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, show a miracle for you, then thou shalt say unto Aaron, take the rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. And Moses and Aaron went unto the Pharaoh, and they did as the Lord had commanded. Now, guess what? That's another Christian thing we was taught, that what Moses put down the serpent staff. So Moses didn't have the staff. Now, this is not the same bronze staff that healed the people. This is another staff. Well, I don't know if it's the same staff that they put a snake on it, so it might be that, but that is not this story. So okay, when I was talking about Hezekiah knocking down Moses staff that people was worshiping, that was another story. Okay, but this is when they brought down the serpents, and the serpent ate Pharaoh's serpent. Aaron did that, and I'm gonna show you. And Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh, and they did so as the Lord had commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. The Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers. Now the magicians of Egypt, they also did like the manner with their enchantments, for they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart, that he hearkened not unto them as the Lord had said. So listen again. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart, that he hearkened not unto them as the Lord had said. So it doesn't say God went into Pharaoh and hardened his heart. It's telling you that Pharaoh became jealous, became envious, because this God has overpowered him. This God has overpowered his serpents. And it says it's not hearken. He didn't hearken because he didn't listen to the message of what it's saying. Because he's saying, you got the power to do this. You got the power to do that. Your serpents might be stronger, man. But guess what I got? I got your people enslaved. Okay. So that's why he didn't want to let them go. Because that's the power he still had. All right. Now, let me show you this verse 20. And Moses and Aaron did so. And as the Lord commanded, and he lifted up the rod. And this is God telling him to do something else. And smite the waters that were in the river, and in the sight of Pharaoh, and in the sight of his servants, and all the waters that were in the river, and turned to blood. And the fish that was in the river died, and the river stank. And Egyptians could not drink of the water of the river. And there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. And the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. And Pharaoh's heart was hearkened, neither did he hearken unto them, as the Lord had said. And Pharaoh turned and went into his house, neither did he set his heart to this also. And all the Egyptians dig around in the river and the water drink, for they could not drink of the water of the river, and 7 days were filled after the Lord had smitten the river. Okay, here again, 23. And Pharaoh turned and went into the house. Okay, let's go to 22. And the magicians in Egypt did so with their enchantments, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened. Okay, so this telling you again that Pharaoh is hardening his heart because he's not listening, and he's not listening to the message, because again, the power he has right now is the enslavement of the Israelite people. All right, and let's go to this. All right, good. All right, let me go to this because this. All right, let me go to verse 8. The Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people. This is when he plagued them with frogs. Because in the beginning, he told Pharaoh, go and tell them to let my people go. The Pharaoh's going to harden his heart. I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. Meaning when he's saying he hardened his heart, meaning Pharaoh's going to get jealous and envious of the things that I do. And when I show my power, he's still going to be hardened. He's still not going to listen. So I'm going to have to do something else. I'm going to have to plague him. He's still not going to listen. Eventually, I'm going to get him to release you, okay? And this is what he's trying to say. He was saying the Pharaoh is going to keep hardening his own heart and not hearken, meaning listening to the message of Moses. All right. And the frogs shall depart from thee, and from the houses, and from the servants, and from the people. Thou shalt remain in the river only. And Moses and Aaron went out from the Pharaoh, and Moses cried unto the Lord because of the frogs which he had drought against Pharaoh. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses, out of the villages, and out of the fields, and they gathered them together upon heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was a respite, he hardened his heart and hearkened unto them as the Lord had said. Okay. But when Pharaoh saw that there was respite, he hardened his heart and hearkened unto them as the Lord God said. So it's telling you this is what God was telling Moses was going to happen. It's not saying that he hardened Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh hardened his own heart through jealousy and envy because of the actions of the Most High. And people say, no, that's not true. So I already showed you 3 verses where it said he hardened it, right? There go one more. The third plague, and the Lord God said unto Moses, say unto Aaron, stretch out the rod and smite the dust now of the land. And why was he coming to Aaron? Because Aaron is the prophet to Moses, and Moses is the God right now to Egypt. All right. So stretch out the rod and smite the dust of the land, and that may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And thou did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with a rod and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man and in beasts. All the dust of the land became lice throughout the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice upon the man and upon the beast. Then the magician said unto Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord God said. See, because the way they're saying it, it makes you think, if you're not really studying and reading, it makes you think they're saying that he hardened Pharaoh's heart. But it said, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened. And he became evil. He became wicked. He became not even wicked. He became jealous. He became envious. He had hatred towards God. But again, the power that he had at the time was what? The enslavement of the Israelite people. And that's what he wasn't trying to let go, because that's the only power he really had, which he didn't, but he did. Okay. This says right here, look what it says on top. Pharaoh's heart hardened. And Pharaoh called for Moses and for Aaron and said, Go ye sacrifice to your God in the land. And Moses said, It is not met so to do, for we shall sacrifice the abomination of Egypt to the Lord our God. Lo shall we sacrifice the abomination of Egyptians before their eyes, and will thou not stone us? We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he shall command us. Okay. We shall sacrifice the abomination of Egyptians to the Lord, and we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. Lo, shall we sacrifice okay, so they're saying that, hey, no, we're going to go this place because y'all going to stone us. You're going to find a reason to do this to us. Okay. We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he shall command us. And the Pharaoh said, I will let you go that ye might sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only ye shall not go very far away, entreat for me. And Moses said, Behold, I go out from thee, and I will entreat the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. But let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully any more, and not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. And Moses went out to the Pharaoh and entreated the Lord, and the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and he removed the swarms of flies from the Pharaoh, but from his servants and from his people, there remained not. And Pharaoh hardened his heart. At this time also, neither would he let the people go. He became jealous, he became envious because of the actions of God, showing that he didn't have enough power, but the power he had was a slaving of the Israelite people. Okay. All right, so let's go to this. And this is what people try to use, and I see it all the time. So I wanted to answer this because I always hear the answer, the question they ask, and I never like the answer that the people give. Okay. So let's go to blah, blah, blah. Okay. I form light, I create darkness, I make peace, and I create evil. I do all these things. What you think this means? All right. If you have a son right now, he's a serial killer. That's still a party. That's evil. He's evil. He's actually a sinner, but you created him. That's still your son, right? The plagues, the things that God created. Some people say that's evil, and many people say it, that doesn't believe in God, that tell you that this is evil what he did. He plagued them, he killed the people's children, he did this, he killed kids. This is what the stuff they are saying. So it's saying that he create what we would call evil, right? He created if people say, well, even though people believe in evil beings, even they say he created them. Even though I know what it really is, I know it's actually idol worshiping, and they're not really demons. But what I'm saying is, he created the evil. He created it, meaning he didn't create the evil. He created the thing that created the evil. Then they ask, is homosexuality evil? No, it's a sin, because everywhere in the world, homosexuality ain't evil. It's a sin. It is a sin in the Israelite culture, and that's why people don't understand, because they're looking at it from outside of Israel as a nation. They're not looking at it as these people in this nation. They're looking at it as a worldly thing. They're looking at it as an individual thing, meaning when they left Egypt, they established a nation, a nationality, a culture, a worship of God. They established these things in a land. One of the rules that was only not the Sabbath, but it also was the sabbatical land law. Okay, which we did not follow, because it's not and we can't follow today because it's not an individual law. It's a law of the land. It's a law of nationality of the nation. That's why we had priests to enforce it, just like going to court. It was the laws of the land that everybody needed to follow, and the king supposed to have been the most righteous person in the land. Okay, so this is what that's talking about. That's why we're talking about the temples. They couldn't sacrifice the temples when they got took from their land. All that stuff didn't exist no more because their nationality was gone, so they couldn't sacrifice. They didn't have the Levitical priest, so they asked them, "What can I do to ask for forgiveness?" And they established prayer over animal sacrifice. So this is what I'm trying to say. So when we left Egypt, they had to de-Egyptize themselves. So they had to get rid of their God, their culture, their land, their worship. That's when Moses came there, he established these laws for you not to fall into that culture again and that idol worship. Because he see it was established. Because you can't take people, bring them in the wilderness, and think you gonna create a nation and not have influence from the culture they just came from, and let you establish a new culture. All right. So again, when I showed Genesis, I'm gonna go back and tell you the three things I just did, and y'all go back and learn these verses, man, and defend them. Adam and Eve did not get kicked out because of the app or because of the tree of knowledge. They got kicked out because he didn't want them to touch the tree of life and live forever. I established those verses, okay? He did not want them to touch the tree of life, so he kicked them out. They was punished for touching the tree of knowledge, but not kicked out. They was kicked out to keep them away from the tree of life, okay? Secondly, God did not harden Pharaoh's heart. He did not go into Pharaoh's heart and harden it. He hardened it by bringing power through Moses and Aaron, establishing over top of Pharaoh, serpents eating his serpents, plagues, and show that Pharaoh didn't have the power to even test God. So he became angry. He became jealous. He became envious of God. He hardened his heart and hearkened not, meaning he did not listen to the messages that God sent through Moses. And I established these verses. Okay, so we had to keep. They show these verses go a little bit ahead and go behind to make sure you can understand what this verse is saying. Because if you read the other verses, it does not say that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. It says Pharaoh hardened his own heart, but God hardened his heart through the actions, not going into doing it, but the things that He sent Moses to do. And thirdly, homosexuality is not evil; is a sin. Sin was created by man. God did not create sin. Therefore, sin cannot be established with evil when it's come to this verse. All right. So y'all check it out. Come back and listen to this and leave comments, like, and share. All right. Peace. Yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed that. That was my correctional sonata. I want to play one more video, maybe like 20 minutes before I get in this presentation. I have something to do real quick, so that way I can play this real quick and then get into my presentation. Let me see. Let me stop this one. Let me go try to find them real quick. Because I just wanted to put this in between, because a lot of people are trying to take our history away, man. Like I said before, they're trying to take our teacher. There's people out here that's actually teaching that slavery didn't exist. There's people out here it's a big movement that's going on and acting like, none of this stuff happened. Slavery didn't happen. Africans and Natives Americans didn't know. Israelites didn't connect together. There's a lot of this fake false teaching going on, man. We got to get to a point. We got to start teaching that again because we can't forget. We cannot forget why we're in this condition and why a lot of this stuff has happened to us. A lot of people, I guess, just so I don't know why they hate their history. They hate what happened. We should be happy that we survived these conditions, man. You know. So let me see if I can get to it. Hold on. Let me see. Let me see. I'm not can Let me go live because I think there's on my live. Oh man, hold on. Hold on. Find it. Find it. I don't see it. Hold on. Let me go type it in. Alright, so this is just me showing my evidence and showing places I went to that I really just like put the field work in and hold on, this thing not working. What happened? Hold on. Dashboard. I cannot find it for some reason. Hold on. Oh, I think I'm in the room. I'm in the studio. That's why. Hold on. I bet. I ain't even know. I won't even know my YouTube. All right. There you go. Right there. All right. I'm about to play this for y'all. Then we will get into this presentation. Share that. Move that right there. Wait, hold on, I gotta take this. Take this. Okay. All right. We'll share it. Okay.
Go ahead, I fell off.
Okay. I'm about to share it right now. There you go. All right. It's on the screen. And I hope y'all enjoy this. Then we will get right into the main event. All right, Pete. The most darkest, evilest jail. The most information from. Is Robert Lumpkin. Robert Lumpkin is the one who created the slave jail. The most darkest, evilest jail in American history, as far as the slave trade. And he also sold slaves out of Richmond into other states. All right, Robert Lumpkin. He operated the jail from 1845 until his death in 1866, making it one of the most infamous prisons of enslaved people in the United States. Lumpkin Jail had a reputation for its brutality and humanity towards those held there. Many of the people in captivity were subject to harsh punishment without being given a fair trial. It was said that Lumpkin's jail had such bad conditions, even hardened criminals refused to stay there. Hardened criminals refused to stay there, despite its reputation. Lumpkin made a significant profit from Lumpkin's jail, as it held hundreds of enslaved African Americans who he then sold to various places in the South. He was a major player in the slave trade and profited immensely from it. This Lumpkin jail, Lumpkin jail, like we showed last time in the documentary, Lumpkin jail was owned by Robert Lumpkin, who maximized profits in his compounds by including lodging for slave traders, a slave-holding faculty and auction house, and a residence for his family, a port city with water on ground and rail connection. Richmond was linked to the slave buying markets such as Charleston and New Orleans. The slave Africans referred to Lumpkin's jail as the devil half acre, reflecting the despair and anger of people separated forever from their families. However, Mary Lumpkin, a black woman who was Robert Lumpkin's widow, boasted post-Civil War black education when in 1867 she rented the complex to the Christian school, which evolved into Virginia Union University. I'm going to talk about her too. I'm just trying to get this Lumpkin jail out of the way. Lumpkin is complex. House, hotel, tavern, kitchen, and jail. Russell put a photograph taken April 1865 from Church Hill, showing the location of Lumpkin's jail complex, corresponding Sanborn map. Archaeological excavations have revealed the foundations of Lumpkin's kitchen and the other buildings. So this is the building right here. Like I keep telling people, don't let nobody tell you this shit didn't exist. Don't let nobody tell you that Africans didn't come over here. Don't let nobody tell you that Native Americans and Africans didn't mix up in great tribes. Don't let them tell you that plantations didn't happen, because plantations is the main reason why the settlements even survived. Okay, Don't let these people lie to you because they're reading fake Google sites and they're going on YouTube and all this stuff and just listening to people that ain't really doing no research. Right? You see me putting the field work. You see me went out there. I ain't just going Google. This is just backing up me coming from a place. All right. How they cover our enslavement. Beginning in the spring of 2006, the James River Institute of Archaeology, under the contract with the city of Richmond, conducted a two-phase archaeological investigation of Lumpkin's jail complex. Prior to breaking ground, the 19th century site was located in our 21st century city by George Fearing. The 1835 base map of Richmond with present-day aerial photos and modern mapping data. Upon view of the resulting image, researchers quickly realized that the entirety of Robert Lumpkin's property, including the jail, lay buried beneath Interstate 95. Its flanking embankments and the parking lot began Main Street train station. With the site now located, the first phase of the investigation could begin. Since the death of Robert Lumpkins in 1866, his property and site of Lumpkins Jail had changed ownership several times and supported industries such as an ironworks, foundry, and railroad depot, and finally a major interstate. Keeping this in mind, the archaeology. All right. So that's why I try to tell people that when people don't understand when we talking about natives, we talking about Africans, we talking about like we are still learning everything too, because this is not like Egypt. This is not like going certain places in the Middle East and Europe where it's just a big broad thing to where you can dig up stuff, to where you can just do archaeology everywhere, because we got buildings, we got businesses, we got people that own land, so you can't just go anywhere and dig up stuff. So a lot of U.S. history is buried under these buildings. They buried it on the houses. And my ancestors, when people used to die back in the day, they just buried you in the yards, the same way. So just imagine before them what they was doing. So it's probably thousands, hundreds, or millions of people that's buried under these things that they can't really tell you the information about, right? All right, so let's go to the next one. All right. From jail to seminary. All right. The atrocities of Lumpkin's jail came to an end with the fall of Confederate forces, heralding the end of Civil War and similar to newly freed slaves. Once held behind its bars, the jail building soon breathed in a new and better life. In 1867, only 2 years after the cries of beaten men and women and children could be heard emanating from the Devil's Half Acre, Mary Lumpkin leased the property of Reverend Nathaniel Culver, a Baptist minister who hoped to establish a religious school for those previously enslaved, stepping over the same iron ring in the floor that once tethered slaves while they were whipped. Mr. Culver taught classes to a quickly growing number of students, and soon Lumpkin's jail became the Culver Institute, later known as Richmond Theological Seminary, upon moving into the more spacious quarters in 1870. So it became the Theological Seminary first, then it became VUU, Virginia State University. The news already did a report that a lot of the places we go to, that go to clubs and all this stuff, was a lot of auction places. So that was on the news. Yeah. Fugitive Slave Act in Gabriel. One of the jail's most famous tenants was Anthony Burns. He was a Virginia slave who had escaped to Boston in 1854 to secure his freedom, but was arrested and returned to his Virginia slave owner. Though the Fugitive Slave Act, upon his return to Virginia, Burns was imprisoned at Lumpkin's jail for 4 months. Nearby is the African burial ground where many enslaved people like the unmarked graves. It is also believed to be the spot where a slave named Gabriel was executed, the mastermind behind Gabriel's rebellion. In 1800, Gabriel was a highly intelligent and literate slave who lived on a plantation in Henrico County. And this is where I'm from. This is the county I'm from, okay? He organized a plan for a widespread slave uprising, one of the largest of its kind in the history of the South. According to Henrico County historians, the plan was thwarted because of several rainstorms and because of disclosure of several slaves. Gabriel was executed October the 10th, 1800. That means some slaves who were scared end up going to them and telling them what was his plan, and before he even even if before he even got the plan started, they murdered him. You know what I'm saying? And that's where a lot of that was going on, and that's why Harriet Tubman always made that quote. She said, "I could have freed 1,000 more, but they just didn't know they were." All right. Mary Lumpkin, his slave wife. Okay. Mary Lumpkin was born in the peak of slavery in the United States, and she herself was born an enslaved person during an extraordinary life. She would not only gain her freedom, but she was able to free a notorious prison slave and start a school devoted to educate enslaved people. She herself was born enslaved, was raped, and by her enslaver, a notorious slave prison owner, forced to marry against her will. But despite it all, she did not sink into despair. So this was a lot of this going on, so people don't even understand. They won't just have them. That's what happened sex. They was marrying them. They was having mixed babies with them. They was enslaving them mixed babies. Then they had babies that looked white and still was enslaving because under that law, if the wife or the woman has the baby and she's a slave, then that baby's a slave. Life of Mary and her enslaver. At a young age, Mary was separated from her family and sold to Robert Lumpkin. Robert Lumpkin was a 27-year-old senior and was considered a cruel man by many. He also owned a slave jail known as Lumpkin's Jail, and from 1844 to 1866, Lumpkins imprisoned there thousands of enslaved people. At that time in history, a slave jail was often used to imprison enslaved people until they were sold. Sort of like an inventory storehouse in today's economy. After being sold to Robert Lumpkins, Mary selfishly made a deal with her slave owner. Uncaring about herself, Mary pleaded for the freedom of her future children. He could do what he wanted to her, she said, but in return, he would have to free the children that they had together. Robert Lumpkin agreed. Now, y'all hearing this? He's saying, they saying that she had to tell him, look, you can rape me, do whatever you want to, do all these things to me, just let our children go. Not her children, our children, meaning the children she made with him. And she had to beg this man to free his own children. Okay. Mary taught former slaves. She managed not only to regain her own freedom, but to secure the freedom of the people that were enslaved in Lumpkin's jail, one of the most notorious prison slaves in the South that was owned by her enslaver. She also realized that setting people is not free. It's not enough. Without giving formerly enslaved people the tools to success and be able to work, their independence will remain limited in practice. That's why she devoted her life to teaching formerly enslaved people. Now, I love that she did this because when you go and look at slavery, when they actually so-called, got freed from the slave plantation, right? A lot of them didn't know what to do. A lot of them didn't have no skills. A lot of them couldn't read. A lot of them had no money. So a lot of them just went back. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of them they did. If you were on a plantation your whole life, all you knew was picking cotton or picking tobacco, or whatever you're doing. When you get free, what are you going to do after that? And then thousands of people migrated into these cities because they got another place called the Devil's Bowl. It's a swamp. They're like hundreds and hundreds of slaves because they were so filling up these cities so quick they didn't have no space for them. They put them in the swamp in the woods. And these people died from malaria and all type of stuff. So a lot of that stuff people don't talk about. Yeah, we got free, but it wasn't great because of the conditions and stuff it was in Africa. Some slaves would tell you in the slave narrative, and some of them would tell you that it was better. They was better off a slave than being free because they couldn't take care of themselves. All right. Mary opened VUU College. Amazing, the school she opened more than 150 years ago still operates today and is now in days known as Virginia Union University. Okay, this is it right here. She helped open. This is a slave who had a slave master who was getting raped, who had children by the slave master, who she had no rights, everything, and she took her life and said, you know what? I'm gonna do this so I can free my kids. I'm gonna let them do whatever. I'm gonna teach these slaves so when they leave here, they're gonna be able to take care of themselves when they leave these plantations. Not just leaving and then being stuck and not being able to take care of themselves. So she teaching them education, how to read, how to have skills to survive. Legend as a freedom fighter. This is who we should be talking about. This woman. The same way we talk about everybody else, we should be talking about because she fought a whole different way. She didn't just fight physically. Nat Turner thought he could fight physically, and you see what happened. And actually, when Nat Turner did what he did, he got over 300 black people murdered because of it, and they killed him. Yes, the good thing about it did start other rebellions that made people change the laws and stuff because they were fearing these rebellions. But she not only helped the people get free, she was teaching them, she was educating them, making sure they knew how to survive in this society. All right. Mary died in 1905 at the age of 78. Mary Lumpkin, like many other famous black women in history, stood up to fight the oppressive system she was faced with. Despite being a slave and illiterate, she not only managed to free herself and her children, she was able to also free the enslaved people jailed at a notorious Lumpkin's jail. Even more, she was able to provide them meaningful education and launch a university that still operates today. She left behind a legacy, perseverance during hard times and taking back places that were once drenched in darkness. Through her unparalleled bravery and selflessness, Mary freed her children and forever changed the course of the devil's half mile. The devil's half mile. Okay, so that's why I said she should be considered a lady. Now, this is the descendant of Mary. Okay, descendant of Mary Lumpkin, and here I am with Kristen Green, author of The Devil's Half Acre, historical account of my ancestor Mary Ann Lumpkin, who transformed the slave trade, the Devil's Half Acre, into God's Half Acre, Virginia Union University. So they took the darkest place, this jail, this trade, or the biggest holding cells in jail other than New Orleans, the wicked man that was raping them. She took all that and still was able to create a college is a great college where we at VCU, Virginia State, VSU. So she did a great thing what she did, and this is 150 years ago. People, and why can't we do this? This is why I'm thinking, why can't we do this? She was a slave and did it. Why can't us, who have the opportunity to do this? Okay. Let's go to the slave trade. All right. Richmond Slave Trail is a walking trail that chronicles the history of trade and enslaved Africans from Africa to Virginia until 1775 and away from Virginia, especially Richmond, to other locations in Americas until 1865. It begins at Manchester Docks, a major port in a massive downriver slave trade that made Richmond the largest source of enslaved Africans on the east coast of America. From 1830 to 1860, the trail then follows a route through the slave markets of Richmond. Beside the reconciliation statue commemorating the international triangle slave trade, past Lumpkin's jail, and the Negro burial ground, the first African Baptist church, a center of African American life in pre-Civil War Richmond. That's me right there. That picture's here of me right there on the slave trail in Charlottesville. I've been to Charlottesville, Ashland, Fredericksburg, Richmond. I can't remember. Fredericksburg, Charlottesville, Richmond, Ashland. I don't think it's one here right go. I was supposed to go to the Petersburg because Petersburg got a history too. So I'm still doing this. I'm still doing my field work. I'm still going out there. So like I tell people, I'm not debating nobody on no damn the slavery happened. You can't even talk to me about that because I already know. I've been to these places. You ain't telling me nothing. I don't give a damn what Google say. I've been there. So, okay. So, Slave Trail, Richmond, Virginia. The Slave Trail walk is designed to offer insight to and give some understanding of what many call America's original sin. The experience is intended to offer insight on a journey that captured Africans' experience through their 90 to a 120-day journey from Africa through the diaspora and their arrival in Virginia. The walk provides a poignant representation of the systematic and economic nature of the institution of slavery. So I walked this path right here that you see. This is one of the paths they had to walk because they get off a dock and then they had to walk through a certain place and then they end up with a jail and they end up auctioning them out to the different places in the city. And they'll auction them out to different places in America, right? All right, so let's get to it. 17 markers offering insight and education into the legacy of slavery. Along the way is Reconciliation Plaza, which showcases a 14-foot brown sculpture that stands as a memorial of intentional slave trade with identical versions in Liverpool, England, and Benin in Africa. So these statues right here is in Benin, is in Africa, is in Liverpool to represent, okay? The plaza creates a place of repose at a busy urban intersection in downtown Richmond and is defined by a foundation, concrete seat walls, and simple landscaping to showcase the 400-foot bronze sculpture designed by artist Stephanie Broadbent. So this is all the way even in Benin, okay? Conditions of the slave trail. When the slaves were taken along the trail, it was not a pleasant experience. Getting there from point A to point B, and so it wasn't about their comfort, even if it's going through the woods, said historian Anna Edwards. Edwards is with the Sacred Ground Project. She said many of these slaves were moved at night. One of the reasons was so the public could not see the horror of this practice. These slaves were not happy people, were often, crying people, were often angry, she said. So these people moved them at night. And because of the conditions and the things they was doing to them, they didn't want the public to see. So this will let you know this was not a large accepted thing, okay? But like I tell people, when you don't see something, they don't show you something, it doesn't look as bad. If I say, hey, this girl was talking, man, I had to slap her, I mean talking to a man, some men, understand that you don't hear women is going to get mad. But the average person would be like, dang, that's messed up, or something like that. But if they see a video of it, it's going to be more damaging to them because they've seen it. You know what I'm saying? That's what happens. They knew about the slavery. They knew this stuff was going on, but they never really encountered it and seen it. So it didn't bother them as much. So when y'all go into these groups and they just showing people, they just beat people in front of everybody, a lot of that stuff is not real. Roots is a fake movie, and that's why I tell people we need to go back and re-study this stuff. Considering the condition that they would have come off of the boats after months and months and months of having been, in the belly of the ships. The nutrition that they would have gotten was extremely minimal. The clothing that they would be wearing would probably be itself very minimal. Edwards says that in the 30 years leading up to the Civil War, Richmond had the second largest slave trader market in the nation, and 300,000 to 350,000 were sold from Virginia. Richmond happened to become the particular epic center for that period, but it means that the most black people who can trace some ancestry back to that period can trace ancestry back to Virginia as you traverse the long winding path. And you see the map right here. Okay. See how they come up the dock? And then they come up. Coming around right there. This is the trail. This is what they had to walk. Okay. Let me put the crossing the Atlantic, mechanics of slavery, despair of slavery, Creole revolt, native markets. So these are two people don't really talk about, the Creole revolt. So Creoles, where is down here, okay? Which Creoles are mostly what? Natives, French, and Haitians, I believe. The native markets, when people don't like to talk about, that the native, which we say the indigenous and the native people were enslaved too, and they was enslaved with us. Slavery challenge, Richmond bargaining trade, transitions, Mayo Bridge, use of arms, Canal Wall Canal, auction houses, reconciliation statue, Odd Fellows Hall, Lumpkins Jail, Richmond African Burial Ground, and First African Baptist Church. So there's a path. When you go there, you can actually walk this path we walk. You walk, and then you start from there. You go all the way up, and you see all these things. They show you and they tell you these things of what events and what happened at the time. And the sad part. I'm not gonna say sad, but the crazy part is, when I went to these places, it's more white people there than black people. It's more white people that care about our history. It's more white people that sit down reading about our history and learning about our history. But we saying these things didn't exist, and we're not even going to these sites. That's the crazy part. Like, we don't even care about our history, but then we'll make up some history because we don't want to feel, oh, it's a slaves, and we try to disown that and try to go past that. Now we're going to 3,000-4,000 years back, caring about what happened in Kemet. That shit don't matter. You know what I'm saying? So the Richmond Slave Trail gives you a chance to feel what many of our ancestors, these enslaved people, experienced. Edwards says it's a lesson we all should never forget. This is a place where people can come begin to know the history. It's a starting point, said Edwards. You can simply deliver the information, but if you can't do it with your feet on the places where the history took place, it resonates more. People accept it better, and then you have to begin to figure out how you recounsel with it, and then how you work with it. Recognize the patterns that we live with today. So what he's saying is, if you go on Google, if you want to research and look it up, yeah, but it's never going to be the same as you get there. We said that about anything. We said that if you talk about Kemet and Israel and all these other places you never went, it's never going to be the same. We can talk about Africa all day. I can read all these African books, but if I don't step on that land, how can I debate somebody or try to go against somebody who's been there, who's talked to the people, who's studied in the land? And that's what we got to understand that. All right, slave trade, Virginia. All right, founded at Jamestown in 1607. The Virginia colony was home to about 700 people in 1619. The first enslaved Africans to arrive in Virginia disembarked at Point Comfort and what is today known as Fort Monroe. Most of their names, as well as the exact number who remained at Point Comfort, have been lost to history, but much is known about their journey. They were originally kidnapped by Portuguese colonial forces, who sent captured members of the native Congo and Ndongo kingdoms on a forced march to the port of Luanda, the capital of modern-day Angola. From there, they were ordered on the ship of San Juan Bautista, which set sail for Veracruz and the colony of New Spain. As we quite comment, about 150 to 350 captives aboard the ship died during the crossing. So that's what only 200,000 survived that one. So that's over half. Oh no, they ain't half. They ain't over half. That's about that's less than half. But and they're almost close to half. I said what 24, 20, 20, 27 more people. And that's half. So 27 more people that have been damn near half, right? So let's say about 40%. I guess I'm just estimating that or guesstimating. Aboard the ship died during the crossing. Then, as it approached its destination, the ship was attacked by two privateer ships. The White Lion and a treasure cruise from the two ships kidnapped up to 60 of the Batistas enslaved people. There was the White Lion, which docked in Virginia colony Point Comfort and traded some of the prisoners for food August 20th, 1619. And so this is what I was trying to tell people when they act like it was a big European thing, like all Europeans was working together. Well, no, they wasn't. They was leaving out these places. They was trying to find land, migrate their people or immigrate their people over there, and they was warring with each other. And then you had other people like the privateer people who, they were stealing from them. Well, I ain't even say they were kidnapped. We ain't no property stealing, but they were kidnapped. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of this stuff was going on. It just wasn't just one thing, and that's why I tell people when you study history, it ain't just one thing. It ain't just one way. There's other stuff that had to happen between, and we when we study history, we go through it like this. We don't say, well, this happened, but between this had to happen, for this had to happen, and on the side, these was happening. So we don't think like that, and that's how I research. Slavery Act of 1807 ban. So people don't understand, or some people, or if you really read slave books, you understand that most slavery ended in 1800, like 1807, 1800. Europe, all of them stopped doing it. The only people who was doing it was the South of America. Okay, and that's where it became really kidnapping. Because at first they was banning from other African tribes, and Benin was one of the biggest slave selling people to them. So that wasn't considered kidnapping then. It was only considered kidnapping when all the European countries banned it. Right? As cash crops like tobacco, cotton, and sugar became pillars of the colonial economy, slavery became its engine. Though the slave trade was outlawed in 1807, chattel slavery and the plantation economy, it made possible flourish in the South. The 1860 census found that there were 3,953,760 enslaved. 760 enslaved people in the United States, making up roughly 13% of the total population. Now you telling me in 1807, 1860, they said in the 1800s, we had almost 4 million people, and we still only 13%. And guess how much we is percent today? We only 12%. So we lost a percentage. How did we not get over? How did that 3 million get to 40 million for one thing within less than 200 years? Okay, and then we're still only 12%. Something just don't sound right about that, and that's why I question that part. They were slaves with no choice. Scholars note that arrivals were typically technically sold as indentured servants. Indentured servants agreed, or in many cases were forced to work with no pay for a set amount of time, often to pay off a debt and could legally expect to become free at the end of the contract. Many Europeans who arrived in the Americas came as indentured servants. Despite this classification and records which indicate that some of them did eventually obtain their freedom, it is clear that the Africans arriving at Point Comfort in 1619 were forced into servitude and that they fit the Universal Declaration of Human Rights definition of enslaved people. So this is what people was talking about when they're trying to say that they trying to change history, say we did just serve. They always said that. They're saying the first ones, when it first started, these people were not supposed to have been permanent slaves. Okay, because they were slaves, they weren't servants, they were slaves. But some are, well, I guess they said some were voluntary slaves, but then the European, even when you go to Georgetown, the European was actually on the plantations first. The poor ones, they was immigrating from Europe. But they stopped immigrating to America to work on the plantations. So then that's when they stopped bringing the Africans. The Native Americans was already on there too. That's why Native Americans and Europeans started mixing. Then Native Americans and Africans and Europeans and Africans started mixing. So a lot of this slave trade thing that they tell you about happened actually in late 1700s to the 1800s. It didn't happen in maybe 100, 150 years, almost two. It didn't happen in 400 years. So that's another thing that people don't understand. Slave trade numbers. The arrival of Point Comfort marked a new chapter in the history of the transatlantic slave trade, which began in the 1500s and continued into the 1800s. The trade uprooted roughly 12 million Africans. All right, check this out. Depositing roughly 5 million in Brazil. So it's more people in Brazil off the boat than anywhere else. And why nobody talks about them? It's more Negroes off the boat that came off the boat from Africa in Brazil. But the main people that'll tell you about is North America, right? And over 3 million in the Caribbean. So Brazil and the Caribbean had 8 million people on the boat. 8 million. That's why I just said it's exaggerated. When I say exaggerated, I don't mean South America, I mean North America. Because when they said the Americas, that's what people get confused because they're putting that all in one. But they actually talking about South America. All that stuff with Christopher Columbus and the Aztecs and Cortez coming over here, all that South America, right? So the number of Africans brought to the mainland, North America was relatively small, roughly 400,000 that were labor, and that of their descendants was crucial to the economics of British colonies and later the United States. And that's why I said the plantations is what they thrived on. But only 400,000 now out of what? That's 8 million. That's 5 million to Brazil, 3 million to the Caribbeans, and 400,000 to North America. All right. How permanent slavery started. 2 of the Africans who arrived aboard the White Lion, Antonio Isabella, became servants of Captain William Tucker, commander of the Point Comfort. Their son William was the first known African child to have been born in America. And under the law of the time, he was born a freeman. In the coming decades, however, slavery became codified. Servants of African origin were oftentimes forced to continue working after the end of their contract. And in 1640, a Virginia court sentenced rebellious servant John Punch to a lifetime of slavery. With fewer white indentured servants arriving from Europe and England, a racial caste system developing and African servants were increasing held for life. In 1662, a Virginia court ruled that children born to enslaved mothers were the property of mothers' owners. So they're saying that these people, this is what they're saying. They're saying these people literally volunteered themselves to be servants. And when they became servants, they had a certain time to be free and became freemen. That's why a lot of people that's called freemen and freemen, they were their ancestors. That's true, right? Servants are African origin, so what they're saying is then they eventually turned it into permanent because the Europeans stopped coming and working on the plantations. So they couldn't get the poor people in Europe to keep coming and working on these plantations. So they had to do something. So what they did is they took the African to replace it and then said, you know what, we're gonna take all your rights, we go permanently do it. And then we can put a system around it to justify what we do and make laws. Okay. In 1842, the English novelist Charles Dickens wrote that the gloom of the dejection and ruin and decay that he attributed to the horrible institution. The majority of inhabitants in some of Virginia's eastern countries were held in bondage. In the western countries, rugged terrain made slavery impractical. In 1829, white citizens there demanded representation in a government controlled by Easterners with different interests. In 1861, they formed a new state of West Virginia rather than join the Confederacy. So West Virginia was created because they didn't want to join the Confederacy. You see that? Because of the conditions they seen that the slaves was in and the things they was doing. A lot of people didn't agree with that. And that's what people don't understand. It wasn't just every white person down here had slaves. It was people, it was about money. Slavery is about money. Slavery was never about race. Slavery turned into a race to justify why they did what they did. And that's why they created a thing called white supremacy to justify why they're doing this to a people that they believed that was lesser to them and not human. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah. All right, so that's it about the slave trail, the slave jail, and the slave trade. I'm gonna say about an hour or two. I'm gonna come and go finish the Jim Crow off. I want to do that separately because that's the top everybody talking about. So I don't want to get this in a way to where people don't see that. We got some old information coming, so y'all stay tuned. All right, peace out, peace out. Yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed that. That was the I just wanted to show that, I know a lot of people don't be wanting to hear that. But hey, this is our history, this stuff that we really need to know, this stuff we need to keep to our kids. Because like where I'm from, like I said before, they taking out CRT, they taking Native American history out. They're trying to take 9 black historical figures, including Martin Luther King Jr. They're trying to pass these laws to do that. And y'all look at the Jim Law stuff that they talking about the voting. You see what I'm saying? Because we don't understand that it's not just the pregnancy we can vote for that actually change stuff. It's the governor, the mayor, the chief of police, the school board. This is stuff that we got to get into the city council meetings, stuff like that. To really even try to have a little, notch in it or be able to change anything. So, I hope y'all enjoy that. But let's get to the Hyksos. This is something that when I read, man, I was like, wow, like these people really be putting this work in about the evidence. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna stop this and get to the next one. Let's see. All right, the Hyksos. Okay, there you go. All right, and yeah, this kind of a long article, so I'm gonna read it for you, but it's gonna break down the Hyksos. I speak on the Canaanite land because a lot of people think the Canaanites is just one people. When in that, it was different people. Even sometimes the Israelites are considered Canaanites because it's just a name really on the land and not just the people. You see what I'm saying? And all these people are Semitic people, the Canaanites, the Israelites, the Hyksos. I think they even said the Sashu people. These are Semitic people. When you go into Semitic and look up the Semitic language and all that stuff, what is under the Asiatic. It's under the Asiatic language. You know what I'm saying? So, hmm. So I'm just waiting for Kareem just to share this, then we'll get started. But Yeah, I just wanted to break this down because I heard, people speaking on it. I talked about the Exodus the last time, so I'm just speaking on who these people might have been and what evidence they have of who they were. Let me see. Okay, yeah, it's going to be by Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology too. So once you share, I'm ready to share this thing whenever you're ready, Kareem. Let me see if I got some questions. Okay, okay. All right, let me go to this. All right, this is from Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology, right? Let's go. Constituted high-ranking figures in the community who were on the scene, um, simultaneous with rulers. One of these, especially prominent Hyksos individual, is a man known from nearly 30 royal Syrup seals found fittingly primarily in Canaan. Let me see if I can pull it up. As well as in Egypt. These scarabs, believed to date in the 17th century BCE, bear the name Yakub Ha. Yakub is the exact translation of Semitic name Jacob. Of course, the Bible shows Jacob was a highly respected leader not only in Canaan but also in Egypt. When he died, he underwent a 40-day embalming process and was mourned by the Egyptians for 70 days. Genesis 51:3. This mummification to a burial process, including 40 days of packing and preserving the eternal organs of body, was well known in ancient Egypt. As with Joseph, he was buried with Canaan. The Ha in Yakub Ha is Hebrew Shemitic word that can mean hill, mountain, or mount. This word is exactly mean, This word is actually connected with Jacob several times in the Bible. Genesis 31:25 and 54, Isaiah 2 and 3. It may have been constituted some kind of familial suffix of surname among the Hyksos that is attested by the next name below. Little is known archaeology about Yakub Ha besides his appearance on these seals. Egyptologists still debate whether or not he literally ruled or was simply a leading figure among the Hyksos community. Naturally, the latter would appear in the best fit of the biblical account. Whatever the case, it is an uncanny match for the biblical patriarch Jacob in the name, period, location, and community. It is also apparent that his name was somewhat renovated or popular among the Hyksos. Other leader bears a similar variant, Yakbim. And this is right here is the symbol drawing of the scarab of Egyptian ruler Yakub Ha. Okay. And I want to show you all the pictures of it. Let me go back up here real quick. Oh man, hold on. I don't went to. Hold on. I ain't gonna just go. All right, this is the pictures right here. Right. So these are some. Now this is this is what people they try to say. They try to take one thing, but I could show you darker and darker than that. And what we have to understand that history was not just one people, just like the Canaanites. It was a mixture of different people. You see what I'm saying? Most of the people, most of the time, was never just like Samaria. It wasn't just one people. It was seven actually different people in that one place of Samaria. Okay. So let's get to it. All right. In a recent article, we established the biblical chronology of the period of the patriarchs, the first half of the second millennium BCE, with the migration of Jacob and his family into Egypt in the early 17th century BCE, or more specifically, according to fairly standard chronology, in around 1660 BCE. With a chronological biblical framework, we can turn to archaeological evidence to see if there is a fit. It is possible to trace the migration of a group out of Canaan into northern Egypt, and there established is the Goshen, northeastern Delta region, as a powerful ruling family during the first half of the 17th century BCE. Not only is it such a group identifiable in Egypt history, their names too are an uncanny match of Jacob and his family. Okay. Many are familiar with the Egypt's New Kingdom period, which began 1520 BCE with the 18th dynasty, a powerful united Egypt controlled by Thutmose pharaohs, ultimately transitioning into the 19th dynasty Ramesside period. This overall New Kingdom period is widely regarded as the one within which the Exodus took place, with both of the two main Exodus theories fitting into the window of the time. The 15th century, 13th century Exodus theories are here. See, that's why I was showing the last time on the Exodus about around the 15th century. So before this New Kingdom period began, however, the picture was very different. This is what is known as Egyptian second intermediate period. This consists of, depending on the definition of chronology, a roughly century-long period from 1670 to 1550 BCE, a decentralized period in which Egypt was essentially split into half between Upper Egypt in the south and ruled by native Egyptian pharaohs, and the Lower Egypt in the north. The swath of Egypt, including the Nile Delta and the biblical land of Goshen. So that's why people don't understand that too. It wasn't always just one place called Egypt, even though that's a Greek version of it. But Tamari was Upper, Lower, Red Sea, Black Sea. All that was called Tamari. Some people say Taseti. I don't argue over the name, but I'm just saying. So I'm just letting that be known. All right. The reason for this divide, the establishment of a Semitic population that had migrated from Canaan into the northern Egyptian delta as a powerful ruling class. These people of Semitic Canaanite origin were known as the Egyptians as Hyksos, a unique people known for their shepherding and multicolored garments. And while later propagandistic Egyptian texts, such as the 3rd century BCE Egyptian historian Menetho, accused them of violently taking over the land, modern researchers now know they became established within Egypt territory peacefully. There's another. This is the Hyksos. This is the tomb of Khnumtep, the second at Beni Hassan. Okay. If you study fake news from ancient Egypt, you would consider the Hyksos a band of nasty, marauding outsiders who invaded and then brutally ruled the Nile Delta until heroic kings expelled them, wrote Egyptologist Daniel Candelora in the article for the American Research Center in Egypt. In fact, the Hyksos had a more diplomatic impact, contributing to process and culture rather than an invasion. It appears that as the centralized authority of Egyptian kings declined, elites at Tel el-Dabs increased their local power until by cope and simply a slow, peaceful process. They took the Helka Kasut Hyksos title and became kings in their own right. The Hyksos continued to live in a self-governing for about a century in the northern Delta region, Egypt, until a series of native Egyptian pharaohs from Upper Egypt in the south rose up, accusing the Hyksos dynasty of overrunning Egypt. Ultimately, the Hyksos were overthrown and eventually, according to Menetho, looked their journey from Egypt through the wilderness. They built a city in the country, which is now called Judea, and large enough to contain these great numbers of men, and called it Jerusalem. as quoted by the first century CE historian Josephus and against Apion. The association of the Hyksos with the Israelites, therefore, is not uncommon. After all, depending on the chronology followed, the dynasty was established in Egypt within the very same decade as the biblical immigration of Jacob and his family, 1660 BCE. By the same token, though, unsurprisingly, it is not popular in academia to outright identify the Hyksos as Israelites. So, y'all listen to that. Popular. It is not popular in academia to outright identify the Hyksos and Israelites. So that don't mean that he's not trying to say it. It's just some people saying it, some people don't. This is how this stuff works. People just go through one way and try to be biased and say, "Oh no, it wasn't," and that's what they do. The term Canaanites, based on their point of origin prior arriving in Egypt, is used much more freely. As one leading Hyksos scholar stated, based on the West Semitic language and the territorial origin of the Hyksos, they may be called, for convenience sake, Canaanites. Still, the term Proto-Israelites is sometimes found in this debate. In the recent Jerusalem Post, one Egyptologist was cited as missing the connection between the Hyksos and Israelites, condemning those looking for such historical connections with the biblical text because the biblical text is not taken literally. Remarkably, however, she admitted that the concept has been frozen in Egypt memory to the point that to this day, the average person in Egypt thinks the Hyksos were Jews and associated with the destruction of chaos. Okay. Putting to one side the junction to not take the biblical account literally, it should be asked, how well do Hyksos fit with the establishment of Jacob's family in Egypt? And despite the comparatively piecemeal evidence for the reign of the Hyksos by design, later Egyptian rulers sought to blow out any memory of them. Can any individual actually be positively identified as members of Jacob's family? Okay, shepherds, kings. And that's what I said what you do when you study. That's what you do. You go with one side, you go to the other side. You see what they saying, you see what they're saying, you see what the evidence compare, and then you see the evidence they compare. That's what you do when you research, okay? First, the name of these people, Hyksos. Some may wonder why this group was not called Israelites. Actually, this terminology is not found often more later in the Bible. The term Hebrews is more often used than Israelites, up until the time of the settlement within Canaan on the other side of the Exodus. Discussion of this Hebrews appellation, which has a remarkable archaeological connection to the time period of the conquest, well saved for another article. Okay, of course, the patriarch Jacob was renamed Israel, Genesis 32:28. But naturally, his sons wouldn't have immediately born and used the title Israelites. Often such patronymic titles take hold several generations later, and even then, during the later monarch period, foreign nations often used different terminology from Israel or Israelite instead of to the further nation with the title its ruling dynasty. House of Amari for Israel is Assyrian inscriptions, and House of David for Judah in Assyrian and Moabite. Okay. The term Hyksos first began as an Egyptian appellation, and it is actually first found as early as the mid 19th century BCE, some 200 years prior of the tomb wall painting a Khnum Hotep, depicting an entourage of men and women in brightly covered garments pictured early in the article. And interestingly, following the same aforementioned biblical chronology, this is the period in which Abraham began making his pilgrimage into Egypt with his entourage. A fairly standard view is that the Hyksos migrants themselves eventually adopted this as their official dynastic title while in Egypt. Defining the Hyksos, a reevaluation of the title HK3, H3SWT, and its implication of Hyksos' identity. Joseph, For his part, quoting Manetho, asserts that the name to the meaning this name to mean shepherd kings from his tone against opinion. This whole nation was styled Hyksos, that is shepherd kings for the first syllable. According to the sacred dialect, denotes a king as a sos and a shepherd, but his according to the ordinary dialect, and of these is compound Hyksos. I bid. The standard modern interpretation of the name Hyksos among Egyptians is as foreign kings rather than shepherd kings, taking Joseph to have misinterpreted the word, but still expressing the non-native nature of these rulers. Still, whatever the case, the ancient Egyptian historian Manetho, whose work now lost is quoted by Josephus, described these people chiefly as the shepherding population, again from Josephus quoting Manetho directly. All right. Indeed, this accords well with the biblical account referring by Joseph, Jacob's family, when they were brought into Egypt, being primarily known for their shepherding. From Genesis 47, 3 to 4, and Pharaoh said unto uh, Joseph's brethren, what is your occupation? And they said unto Pharaoh, thy servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers. And they said unto Pharaoh, to sojourn in the land are we come, for there is no pasture for thy servants' flocks. The Pharaoh proceeded to turn over the land of Jacob's family in the northern delta territory of Goshen. The capital of the city of Hyksos was a location called Avaris. Again, quoting Manetho, Josephus related that Avaris was the ancient city and country of the shepherd given to them within Egypt. This site is identified as the modern-day ruins of Tel El Dabs. Archaeological excavations have revealed evidence of a clearly foreign Semitic population with housing styles similar to the Canaan, along with the Levant-style weapons and pottery. They also found sacrificial remains, notably excluding pig, leading excavators to speculate that some form of kosher system was in place. Large food storage silos were also discovered at the site. Much has been made of a complex within the containing 12 tombs. One of them is much grander than the others, yet lacks any human remains. Compared to Genesis 50:25, a fair amount of interesting attention was given to the patterns of evidence, the Exodus, particularly an unusual statue in a tomb archaeologist David Raw identifies with Joseph. All right. Is this the one I already did? Yeah, that's the one I did about the car. All right. Let's go to this. Ashkar. A single inscription found on a door jamb at Avaris reveals another of the early Hyksos leaders. The individual name similarly suffix Sakar Ha. The word Sakar means reward, with the Ha suffix again matching of Yakub Har. The name closely parallels that Jacob's son Issachar. Biblical name Issachar or Issachar or Sakar means there is a reward. The Bible relates that his mother Leah proclaimed she bore him. God has granted me a reward, Sakar. So she named him Issachar. Genesis 30:18. Okay. But what about Joseph? As the biblical recounts, he was the first of his family established within Egypt, and it was a course of individual according to the additional rulership of the nation as a second in command of Egypt under the native Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. Only in the throne will I greater than thou. Genesis 41, 41 through 40. Besides other prominent names highlighted by archaeology, such as the two above, the Egyptian historian Menethil enumerated six official Hyksos rulers. This is what wrote the very first one of came to power in Egypt, again as quoted by the first century historian Josephus. At length, they, the Hyksos, made one of themselves king, whose name was Salatus. He also lived in the Memphis and made both under and lower regions pay tribute. Thither, Salatus came at summertime, partly to gather his corn. This corn gathering is alone an interesting tidbit related to biblical account. The Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea very much. Genesis 41:49. Manetho's first Hyksos, king, Salatus. Variously, Salatus or Salatis may seem to first have nothing to do with the biblical Joseph name, but the name Salatis is a particular note. First, note that both the classical writers Manetho and Josephus wrote in a Greek. In this language, masculine names often have an added, is ending. This is the case with their naming of other such pharaohs or leaders. And is ending added, such as the Hyksos ruler Apophis, known in original Egyptian from Apep or Apepi, a suffix now originally part of the name, so we can strike this from the name Salit is. In the Bible, Joseph is called governor of Egypt from Genesis 42 to 6, and Joseph was the governor over the land, but the word here translated governor is unique, entirely different to that used dozens of times elsewhere throughout the Bible for different governing individuals. The title here is Salit, this naming him Joseph the Salit, an uncanny match for Menetho's first Hyksos king Salit or Salitus. After Salitus, the second Hyksos ruler recorded the Menetho is Benon or Benon. Logically, if we identify the first Hyksos leader, Salatis, as Joseph, while recognizing other leading brothers on the scene at the same time, it would only make this most sense to identify his ordinary successor in a sense as his only full brother. The youngest of Jacob's 12 sons, Benjamin, the Bible relates in some detail in the level of Joseph's public honoring of Benjamin in Egyptian court. He received 5 times the portion of food as the other brothers. Genesis 43:34. 5 times the amount of royal apparel and great riches. Genesis 45:22. Of course, there is some face value, degree of similarity to the names Benjamin and Benon, but there is another, which more striking connects a lesser known fact in the Benjamin actually had 2 names, Benjamin being his second name given to him by his father and play on his first name at that. Benjamin's first name was to him by his mother, Raquel, who died soon after a painful childbirth. And it came to pass as her soul was in departing, for she died, that she called his name Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. The name Benoni, a veritable match for the second Hyksos king, Benon, literally means son of my sorrows. Okay, so you hear them, they messing up the words. All just coincidental parallels But the list could go on. With certain other less obvious parallels to Hyksos figures, what about one of the later Hyksos leaders, Cain? Amos 5:25 and 26 mention the particular name, Cain, in the context of Israelite Exodus. What about Simquin, or Shimquin? This Hyksos leader is known from a singular scarab seal found in Tel El Yehudah. Yehudah. Interestingly, a site in Lower Egypt whose name means Jewish mound. In the initial Semitic Shem element is immediately recognized, but could this perhaps even be a link to the biblical Simon? Again, there is more than meets the eye with this name between the M and the N in Simon, pronounced in the modern Hebrew more like Shimon. Let me see. For which there is no equivalent in English, and the original sound of which has also been lost in the modern Hebrew, is the same letter, for example, that starts the name of biblical king Amori, a name translated in ancient Syrian inscriptions as Komuri. If the latter was originally pronounced in such a way, is it in the realm of possibility that Shemquin and Simon, Shem, K-On, are one of the same individual. There are also names such as the final Hyksos leader, Kamadi, a typical type of name of the pyramid. Of the period. Genesis 36:26, a Hebrew Shemitic word meaning something akin to desirable or pleasant. Another example is Hyksos leader Sheshi, whose Semitic name can be found in the Bible and used during the period, although for another individual, Numbers 13:22. That's the thing, though. Given the Semitic origin of the Hyksos from the land of Canaan, their names are typically Semitic ones. Okay, so we understand there were Semitic people. This one I want to get to right here. Is the Hyksos again at the Kanum Hotep II. This is what you see. I have a video that I seen that the dude was inside of this, and he showed the Semitic people, the Hyksos, the Asiatics, what he called them, and he showed what they look like, and all of them look like this going across, hundreds of them. You know what I'm saying? So y'all check that out. Y'all look up the Hyksos on YouTube. You'll see a lot of the archaeology. Is it all just a coincidence? A powerful dynasty operating first within Canaan, subsequently moving peacefully in Egypt and becoming established as a royal dynasty over territory in north of the land, the biblical region of Goshen. In the 17th century BCE, a Semitic shepherd-centric dynasty, and one which is particular infinity for rich, multicolored garments. A dynasty whose several initial rulers closely matched with the names or titles of Jacob and his sons, and the first leader particularly highlighted in the context gathering Egypt corn, no less, and a nation, according to Amenethil, who also came to be called captives in their sacred books. What kind of captives were these? Or, for the matter, what were their sacred books? Can there be any doubt that this is a reference to the biblical Israelites and their holy scriptures? All right, how powerful were the Israelites? The Hyksos indeed rose to become a formidable group within Egypt. They experienced a particular sharp rise in the power in the north of the nation, which escalated to the peak of dominance that some argue surpassed even that of the native pharaoh ruling from the south of Egypt. But does that picture appropriately accord with the biblical account of the single family of Jacob? One of the foremost Hyksos experts states that the identification of the Hyksos as proto-Israelites should be ruled out because the Hyksos experienced the glory of controlling the delta and a part of the Nile Valley for over 100 years. This is in no way in keeping with the tradition of the Israelites and their experience of oppression in Egypt. Yet, far from being contrary in the biblical record, this fits perfectly with the account contained in Exodus 1:10, in which the Israelites, for the first part of their stay in Egypt, had become fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. Verse 7. It was only much later in the Israelites was overthrown and enslaved by a new king over Egypt who knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of children of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal wisely with them. Verses 8-10. Biblically, chronology has Joseph beginning to rule around 30 years old and dying at 110. Thus, if this new king knew not Joseph, it would stand to reason that this would be a bare minimum 80 years after the patriarch had first come to power, and more logically, several decades later than that. This statement by the new king over Egypt actually reads almost exactly like a text known as the Carnarvon tablet, a mid-16th century inscription by the native Egyptian pharaoh Hyksos, who feared that the Hyksos was getting too powerful and needed to be overthrown. For what it's worth, as the inscription reveals, Hyksos advisors protested against the nationalistic pharaoh, stating that Hyksos were doing nothing but threatening states of the Hyksos were doing nothing but threatening Egypt and were instead made tame. Oh, hold on. Put this thing in for I do. Battery thing. All right. There you go. All right. Hyksos dismissed his advisors and went to war against the Hyksos. It was during the reign of Thutmose' successor Utmos the first that the Hyksos were entirely overthrown and the new kingdom period began, with all of Egypt united under one powerful, domineering native Egyptian ruler, starting 1550 BCE. That'll day to go again. This is the Carnarvon tablet. Now, I got to study on that more, but you see how it is, and that's how most inscriptions is. They ripped up. So some of the stuff that they put in just to finish the sentence, and this is how a lot of inscriptions is from Egypt to all ancient stuff. All right, and that's what Commissioners always talk about. There could perhaps be a tendency of view Jacob's family, his sons, as more or less an insignificant group of humble shepherds quickly overwhelmed within the melee that was ancient Egypt. But even from the outset of their exodus entry into Egypt, this was no insignificant group of puff people. They were in their own right a powerful force to be reckoned with. So that's a thing that people, they try to act like they were just shepherd king that came in and act like, no, these was powerful people. What they telling you, all right? Such was the strength and influence of patriarch-led groups like this in Canaan, controlling vast numbers of shepherds, retainers, and other workmen, that the king of the Philistines set the patriarch Isaac and his entourage away. For thou, Isaac and company, art much mightier than we. Genesis 26:16. And Isaac, if you recall, was a patriarch with only two recorded sons, Esau and Jacob, right? Note also that the total destruction of the notably powerful Canaanite city Shechem at the hands of only two of Jacob's sons, Simon and Levi, in a revenge of the shame brought upon the sister Dinah. Genesis 34. Got to get more into that. This was a retribution certainly led by the individuals, but undoubtedly with the support of their workmen. In this same vein, the patriarch Abraham had 318 trained men born in his house. Genesis 14:14. Y'all make sure you add these scriptures and look them up and study them. That's what I'm doing. Before he had any sons of his own, whom railed the beat back of a coalition of armies attacking Canaan and the personal differences between Jacob and his brother Esau very nearly led not to a single hand-to-hand combat between them, but to all-out war between their large entourage. Genesis 32:33. Esau's fielding a band of 400 men. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and his sons were mere monkish, ascetics, or vagrants. They represented powerful leaders over significant populations of people for their time. So much so that James Jordan, in his book The Moses Connection, speculates that Jacob Tolley entourage is descending down into Egypt could have numbered as many of 10,000 individuals. Other theories posit several thousand. Okay, History of the Old Covenant. That's a book. That's one of the books that y'all look up. All this only fits well with the picture painting the Hyksos, a civilization in their own right living in Egypt. Powerful in might, perhaps it's also no wonder that in the Exodus numbers given just over 2 centuries later are so enormous, and why Manetho speaks of the Hyksos during their latter years in Egypt, fielding hundreds and thousands of footmen. There were indeed, to use terminology of the book Exodus, footmen, the host of armies of Israel. Exodus 6:26, 12:37, and 51. Numbers 1 and 3. Is also evidently one of the reasons why the native Egyptian pharaoh ruling over a population generally estimated for this period as being around 3 million people, were that these rapidly multiplying foreigners were becoming more and mightier than we. I mean, that's kind of going on now. We're talking about America, the mass migration and the jobs being took and stuff like that. There's argument going on right now to this day. Because that's why I say anybody that migrates to anywhere in massive amounts will cause problems to the economy and population of anywhere we go. All right. Of course, all this does not mean that all Hyksos were necessary Israelites, full blood descendants of Jacob and Israel. Archaeologists have indeed revealed evidence of some degree of what has been called multiculturalism among the community while in Egypt. But again, the Bible itself reveals that at the time of the Exodus, along with the Israelites, a mixed multitude went up also with them. Exodus 12:38. The same chapter also contains provisions of those of other nations seeking to become part of the congregation of Israel. That's supposed to be one of the Hyksos Sphinx. So y'all check that out, Hyksos Sphinx. And like I told people before, it's like the Canaanites, it's like Sumerians, it's like Egypt. All of them was different types of people who came together and created it. You see what I'm saying? And people are today are what they are doing like they do anywhere, like they did Africa, Europe, anywhere. They put all these people, America, they put all these people under one name and make you think that everybody was just the same people. Okay. But high monotheistic. Another fallacy they may have been held against the general identification of the Hyksos with the Israelites is a tendency to view Jacob's family as righteous monotheists. This was highlighted in a few years ago by Haaretz journalist in an article titled "For You Were Not Slaves in Egypt," who dismissed the historicity of the Israelites of Egypt because of the lack of archaeological evidence of YHWH worshiping community. Actually, this fits with the biblical account from another angle. The divine name YHWH was revealed to Moses just prior to the Exodus as a name for God, which was formerly not known to them. Exodus 6:3. Certainly, as the Bible reveals, the patriarchs themselves maintain a monotheistic loyalty to the God of the Bible, but there is more than can be said of their families, even their wives. Genesis 35:2 mentions Jacob's attempt to remove strange gods from among those of his household. Genesis 31 even describes Jacob's wife Rachel stealing away the gods of her father Laban. The Hyksos similarly were known for a degree of monotheism, sometime unusual in Egypt at the time. They are known for reverence towards self, sometimes equated with either the biblical patriarch Seth or Shem. Genesis 4:25, 11, 10, and the evidence agree the Canaanite Belial worship has also been found among their ranks. But this is another interracial connection between the Hyksos and the Israelites. One of the chief symbols of Belial is the bull. Recall the Israelites, after being freed from captivity, built the worship of the golden calf. This is thy God, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Exodus 32:4. This bull calf, Matuf, uh, precisely crops up in the Israelite worship during the period of Judges. For example, Gideon slaughtered the bulls of Belial's. Judges 6. Later, King Jeroboam established two golden calves for worship. Once again, idols were named as thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt. 1 Kings 12:28. All right. Was the bull calf god merely an arbitrary Egyptian deity picked up by the Israelites while they were in Egypt? This is a particular explanation, but perhaps it doesn't sufficiently explain the consistency of the Israelite worship of it, and in particular, its role to deliver from Egypt. Was this perhaps a Canaanite or Syrian god that had already been historically worshipped by certain among Israelite royal ranks? First pick up while in Canaan, or even early in Syria, and continue to be venerated as god of the Hyksos later during the height of their prosperity, hence the identification post Exodus, and this God as their original own God, the one who brought them out of Egypt. Nonetheless, Manethos does include an interesting detail about the early Hyksos at the time of their arrival in Egypt. They demolished the temples of the gods. But what are Israelite? I mean, were the Hyksos driven out too early? A final question about the association of the Hyksos with the Israelites. Manethos account, the most complete early Egyptian account we have, yet still a passage of events composed over a millennium after the fact. A face value appears to show that the falling overthrow of the Hyksos in 1550, they were immediately driven out of Egypt into Canaan, where they established a Judean nation with Jerusalem as the capital. Actually, Manetho somewhat confusedly appears to describe two Exodus. The second, long after the overthrow expulsion of the Hyksos, allegedly took place with the Egyptian priest duly named Asarsuf, and the Moses rose up to free band of 80,000 slaves together with 200,000 Hyksos who had somehow reappeared in Egypt and were driven the second time in Canaan by a later Egyptian pharaoh. Both exoduses, is interestingly enough, consist of roughly similar numbers of the people, all of which are relayed in the length quotation of Josephus against Apion. Much has been made of the propagandistic, and even clearly anti-Semitic nature of Manetho's text, though in many ways it does not constitute a more than suspicious omission of Exodus account. You can read more in the subject here. Yeah, I go to the page right here. They got a lot of stuff, activations and archaeology and stuff they're digging up. There's a lot of stuff they're doing. Um, Dr. Manfred, chief excavator of Tel El Dabs, Ivaris, is one of the foremost experts of Hyksos. He states that despite Manetho's overly simplistic claim that the Hyksos were expelled and Canaan following their defeat in 16 BCE, there is no archaeological evidence for this. We have no evidence that the Western Asiatic population who carried the Hyksos rule in Egypt was expelled in the Levant. He writes in his research article, from where came the Hyksos and where did they go? Instead, following the defeat, there is a mounting evidence to suggest that a part of this population stayed in Egypt and served their new overlords in various capacities. Emphasis added. Evidence this can be found uh, on finds throughout Egypt, including an uninterrupted production of Hyksos-style pottery in the eastern delta, as well as the degree of continued worship of Canaanite cultures. Okay, let's see. All right, almost there. The archaeological data then fits more closely with the biblical account of the Israelites being overthrown by the native Egyptian pharaoh and set to work at various production and construction jobs around Egypt, probably in the conditions of worsening severity. This followed by a single Exodus event. One of those fit with the archaeological evidence from a time of upheaval in Canaan, not from the mid 16th century BCE period of Hyksos overthrow, but roughly 150 to 200 years later. Okay, the overall picture revealed by archaeology of period of Hyksos rule then fits remarkably well with the biblical account of chronology of this descent of Jacob and his family into Egypt, the Exodus. Can we pick up the population of the other side of the sojourn after the Exodus? We certainly can, but that we'll save for next time. And I want you to let me see. I want to show what these people. Excavation. I think this is the one I want to. All right. I just want to say who they are, making sure they just not know people. They're just saying that they actually working with archaeologists, right? The Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology and student volunteers from Herbert W. Armstrong College have supported Dr. Elet Mazar and Hebrew University since 2006 in excavations in the city of David and on a field. Following the death of Dr. Mazar in May 2021, AIBA and AC have continued the archaeology legacy of a lot on the Afel and in the city of David by working in partnership with Professor Yosef and the Hebrew University. AIBA also works closely with the City of David Foundation, the Israel Antiquities Authority, and some of Israel's best archaeologists. Okay. So just let you know they dealing with the college people, the volunteers, they're excavating and they doing archaeology and all this stuff. So this page is not just people or or school teacher, nothing, just trying to make a website. It's actually people who are actually digging up in Israel, finding articles and trying to put it together and explain more of who these people are. Okay, I got more information coming. I'm trying to get to the Shashu people and trying to break down more of the Asiatic people. Showing, I got evidence of showing that the Asiatic people language that they're talking about, the Hebrew, the Akkadian, the Canaanite, the Somalian, I think is the Ethiopians, if I'm mistaken. Ethiopians is others that when you go into the DNA is E1, B1. So we'll show that next time. Again, thanks Karima for showing letting me get on the show and show my thing. Let's see. Water blue, he told Godfrey to put his little arms down. 400 years for Amos and Cumos. Thank you, bro. Yeah, that's what's up. Peace, indigenous black man. Rob Bowen. See him. Okay. But yeah, I'm gonna talk to Karima get back. Um, but yeah, y'all subscribe to the Lands Den. Y'all check out all the other videos before this, man. They got a lot of other videos with a lot of information, a lot of things going on. Um, I've been on at least the show at least about 15, maybe 20 times by now, doing my thing. Um, so I'm glad that y'all came. Let's see, stubborn request of pride. Got a point. Ain't all these people put this up? Okay. In 1820, the Church signed a treaty. Commerce was good. Well, good check the agenda today. Yeah, I just wanted to teach on here. I ain't really into that stuff they be doing over there, So I mean, I know it's going on, probably ending soon, but we gotta know about the good. Anybody got any questions before I go? Anything to say? Peace to Cows Run. Peace to Marquise, E Bizzle, Indigenous Black Man, Plus Beats, Christopher the Lawful, Cool Fins, Aquatics, Korea the Introvert. Who else? And Blizzak. Peace to y'all for watching, man. Thank y'all. So I hope y'all go back if y'all missed it. Go back to the other videos we done. I just did the one on the Exodus, there's a video or two before this. You know, JJ be dropping bombs. I seen some with Kansu. I seen some with apostles. There's all type of people be on here learning, man. I mean, teaching. So there's all type of aspects you can learn from, the different people you can learn from. So y'all subscribe, y'all like, y'all share. And I think I think the debate tournament is still going on. I really don't know. I think it's still going on. You know what I'm saying? I don't know the date and stuff, but I know Kareem will know more about that than I do. But y'all like, subscribe, share, and watch all the videos. Go all the way back, man. It's different videos they get to all the way back. Great debates and stuff, information. Bring it to the youth, man. That's what I do. I know I got about 3, 4 people that comes on this show just to watch them. And I got to set it up for them. I told them come watch this stuff. They love it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of them don't like this and other stuff because too much arguing and stuff and just craziness. You know what I mean? But this channel's for teaching and learning and debating. Debating is the same thing, and that's what it's about, man. And something that the youth can come and learn from, because our generation is up to us. It's our responsibility as our generation to teach the next generation. They teach the next generation. That's how stuff works. You know what I mean? That's what I've been doing for a long time. And thank you, Karima. And I enjoy always coming on the show with you. I mean, if you got a video or something we can go out on, you can play it. Sounds like JJ ran from debating me, but it's all good. I mean, hey, I ain't never seen really JJ run, so just go holler at him. Maybe you can set up something with him. Nomadic, okay. I don't see JJ everywhere, so hey, JJ a bit on the letter to other shows. It should be everywhere. FOP, so. See, gotcha. I beat him. Pineapples does go on pizza. Oh man, yeah, I guess. But yeah, thank you, Karima. I'm about to head out. Um, yeah, thanks again. Thanks to
Okay.
Lansden, and thanks to Lansden, and thanks to JJ. And like I said, y'all go, yeah, y'all go follow Kareem on her Facebook, man. She be putting out a lot of information. People just think she be sitting here just hosting. She actually be researching and studying. And there's verses that, because I want her to talk about, one day when we do a show, I want her to talk about that. Uh, damn, what's that thing? The alopecia thing. 'Cause that was real interesting to me. I never heard that. Like, I mean, that was something that blew my
Right.
mind. I was
That's
like,
why
wow.
I want to talk about that. My internet messed really do.
Okay, yeah, we could do
But
that
yeah,
next.
I want to do that. To talk about
Okay.
the difference between alocasias and what is
Oh,
that lupus.
okay. Can we you want to set it up? We can set it up Monday. If you want to? We can do it Monday. You can do it. I would love to hear it. But yeah, we're about to end the show. Peace, y'all. Thank you, Karima, again. Peace out, y'all.